What is up, BookTube? It is Monty, and today I am back again, once again, with the start of another video. Kind of. I'm here to introduce the video, but the thoughts and opinions that you're about to see in however long this video is have already been expressed, because this is a video that is brought to you by the lovely members of my Patreon, because without them, this video would likely never have seen the light of day. In January, I had the idea of daily vlogging my blackathon reading journey. I wasn't going to follow the prompts, but I really wanted to, selfishly, I wanted to redeem myself for my failure during Vlogmas. But unlike Vlogmas, I don't think anybody is expecting a video a day in the month of February, and so I decided that it would be a fun little perk to add over there on my Patreon, on the Patreon. So every day, just about, for the month of February, I have been over there chronicling my journey through Blackathon, new Black authors, both in the diaspora and Black Americans. And so this is part of that journey. Today, I have assembled a tapestry, if you will, a curated selection of my time with Stephen L. Carter, my new favorite author. All-time favorite author? No, but definitely my favorite Black author, a Black author that I have not seen anybody in the booktube space talk about and shine light on. And I feel like it's a little criminal, not gonna lie, I feel like he is an underrated little gem. So I'm here today to allow Past Monty to talk about 5 of the books that I picked up by Stephen L. Carter in the month of February. 4 novels, 1 nonfiction. I don't know how long the final product is going to be, but it very well could be feature length. So if you have to take breaks, take a break, but make sure you watch the whole thing, because Stephen L. Carter cannot be slept on. I refuse for y'all to sleep on Professor Carter like that. So I'm gonna go, and I'll see you in a minute in a past clip. What is up, you guys? I am here to wrap up today's vloggy vlog. I'm on page 250 of the Impeachment of Abraham Lincoln, which just feels like as good a place as any to call it a day. I am just under halfway through this book. According to the book itself, I have 506 pages to read. So we are just now getting to the actual trial. Here's the thing. This book is incredibly slow moving. It's incredibly, I wouldn't say it's like fast paced at all, but I'm still heavily invested in the story that Stephen L. Carter is telling. I just want to get through it, but I also don't really have a lot to say. I've done a little bit of reading. I'm currently still sprinting with Aaron, so I probably will read more than this, but I've read a considerable amount. I was on page 250 before. I'm now on page 335. And the book is still booking. You know, we aren't finishing like I would have hoped, like I would have thought I would. But this is supposed to be the part of the book where, you know, Abraham Lincoln is on trial for his 4 counts, which I took a picture of. Here are the things that he is accused of having done, which is rooted in like actual history. So these are things that Abraham Lincoln did do. Apparently there is actually discourse amongst historians, that's the word, about whether, had he survived, would Congress have tried to impeach him, which is kind of the basis for this whole thing. So I think it's not this picture. Is it? Where did it go? Oh, it's on this page. Haha. Okay, so There were 4 counts. The first related to the suspension of habeas corpus, the second to the censorship of newspapers and the seizure of private telegrams, the third to the supposed inattention to the protections of the freedmen, and the fourth to his desire to overthrow the authority of the Congress. The first 2 are rooted in historical fact, and the second 2 are really, I say that all 4 of them are rooted in historical fact. The first 2 are like uncontested by Lincoln and his like attorneys and the people that are prosecuting him, the House managers. The second 2 is really going to be what the bulk of the trial that we're going to be watching play out is about. So the inattention to the protection of the freedmen, so the freed slaves that were in the former Confederacy, and then the fourth desire to overthrow the authority of the Congress. We're going to see some kind of evidence produced about that. And the trial so far is like, I don't know, maybe I expected too much. I really wanted a nice like thrillery, twisty, turny, edge of your seat crime courtroom scene, and it's not really what we're getting. It still feels like the first half of the book. So like I went into this thinking it was going to be a banger, 5 out of 5 stars, and it's really four, like a three. It's somewhere in that like in that range where like if the ending is really strong, it could be a four, and I'd be really happy to give it a four. But it's kind of giving a 3 star, which is not what I expected. So it feels like a letdown, even though I am still enjoying it. I'm getting to see a perspective of these characters that I hadn't anticipated. I'm getting to see history through a lens of characters that I hadn't anticipated. But also, I really just wanted a black lady lawyer. My heart was really set on this black lady lawyer who isn't anything else other than like a black lady lawyer. And while it feels very true to the time, also there was a really let me backpedal. So there was a scene addressing the third count of his inattention to the freedmen brought by a black man who was from Columbia, South Carolina, and he owned and operated like a feed store, for like livestock and things. And it talked about how, his barn was burned by the Ku Klux Klan, and he went to the governor, and the governor was like, I can't do anything, and yada, 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 and Lincoln's to blame. And then when he was being cross-examined by our main characters, like their little, ragtag group of lawyers, it came out that like it wasn't so cut and dry, and like maybe he wasn't even where he said he was supposed to be, and like his memory wasn't all that, and it was like this really intense moment, right? You're like, oh my goodness, this man lied on the stand. And then there was a line that the man said about how he had been bought and sold 4 times. And I was like, damn, okay, hate that. But this is the only time he got the money. So like maybe he wasn't where he said he was that night, and maybe, white people did pay him off to get on here and like help them get Lincoln out of office. But at the same time, he'd been bought and sold 4 times, but this was in his best interest to do so. And I was like, okay, interesting. So like there are moments in this book that are actually like, damn, they make you stop and think, and it makes me stop and think. And I am having a good time. I don't hate this book. I just really wanted a black lady lawyer, and she's just a secretary, and they're about to have her sent to Richmond, Virginia to go talk to somebody. And she's like, do you know what they do to people like me in Richmond, Virginia? And her little coworkers are like, yeah, maybe, but you're the only person that can go. So there's a lot that is going on in this, and I'm very much looking forward to doing a little bit of reading. Good morning, people of the internet. How's everyone doing? I noticed we had some new patrons, so welcome over here. I guess mentioning on the main channel that I have one of these is beneficial, but I haven't done any reading yet. So here's my game plan. Here's my to-do list. I just got back from putting up a truck, so going home. I'm finally gonna eat breakfast, might get some coffee. Ooh, scandalous. So I'm gonna do that. I need to return Promise Boys to the library because I've read it. There's no need for me to keep it, and also my job is like 2 seconds from the library, so when I go back later, I need to return that. And then I need to do some reading, so I need to settle on an audiobook because I still Back Channel. We're finally gonna listen to Back Channel, so that should be in the thumbnail. I'm gonna listen to Back Channel while I'm at work. I don't know if I'm actually gonna read earlier. If y'all are new here, I think on Saturday I decided that my ebook was going to be Rootless, and Rootless was going to be a morning read, and then the Impeachment of Abraham Lincoln was going to be an afternoon, like nighttime when I get home from work, unwinding read. Don't know if that's gonna happen. We're gonna see. We're gonna play that one by ear, but that's kind of the game plan. Breakfast, coffee, library at some point. Reading might fit into there. Reading might fit its way in there. Fingers crossed. But honestly, no promises in that front. Outside of that, and then this evening, obviously the impeachment. I'm on like page 300 now. I think it's 331 to be exact. That's where I ended yesterday when I came in and gave you guys the update. There are 516 pages, I think, according to my copy of the book, or maybe 516 is on Goodreads, but my copy is like 501, 502, something like that. So I'm almost done. The book is nearing completion. It's just like, when I'm reading it, I'm enjoying it. When I'm not reading it, I'm not thinking about it, kind of a thing. What is up, you guys? How is everybody doing? I did not do any reading of the impeachment today. Just didn't happen. It's not going to. No. I got home, I made dinner, and while I was making dinner, I did listen to about 15 pages of Back Channel by Stephen L. Carter. And there's not a lot to say. Um, I will say that this does read like these two books. I think this came out first, and then this was his release after, and they definitely feel like the same person, and so I think that I will enjoy this. I don't know if I'm gonna continue with the audiobook because me and Bonnie Turpin, we be beefing sometimes, but we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. I'm not gonna judge it just yet. But of the 15 pages that I listened to, I have met our young person. What is her name? Margot Jensen. So I've met Margot Jensen, who is this Black Cornell student. But when we meet her, she's like with JFK, which was interesting because I was not expecting that. And he's doing this other, I think that Stephen O. Carter just really likes playing with alternate history, which I kind of like. I'm kind of into it at the moment. But here, Margot Jensen, again, is like an African American student from Cornell. But here, the thing that we're playing with history is we're obviously looking into the Cuban Missile Crisis. But it looks like we're taking this approach that like JFK was not a serial cheater, which interesting take. And so we know that he and Margot are like something about the CIA is having them pretend to be having an affair. But again, like this was the prologue material. And so where I'm at now, we're seeing her at Cornell taking this class with a professor that is like notoriously hard, and he doesn't really believe in like apparently like just female students in general. He's never given a female student higher than a B, and so she's like, well, I'm gonna be the first one, which is also like again very similar to our home girl Abigail over here, who's like mother was like, you're not like the other Negroes, you can do anything you want to do, which okay, sure. I don't know if okay. And then here, Margot is very much cut from that same cloth where her family was well off, well to do, and her father was a Cornell alumnus, but he was also not in the picture. Again, like Stephen O. Carter seems to write a very specific kind of book, at least in the two that I've picked up so far. And in terms of just like pure, I don't know, hopefully y'all can't hear that. I think there's like an airplane happening. Anyway, he likes a very specific kind of book, and a very specific kind of heroine is in those books. So we're going to see where it goes. Tomorrow I'm finishing something. I don't know what I'm going to finish. I don't know if I'm finishing Back Channel by Stephen L. Carter. I don't know if I'm going to finish The Impeachment of Abraham Lincoln. I don't know if it's going to be I don't know why I'm holding this up. Maybe because I'm going to be editing Monty. Maybe he won't be lazy and you'll get a book cover. Or if it's going to be Rootless by, I think this author is also a Crystal. Maybe not though. So I guess now I have to put the book cover in. I don't know what it's going to be, but something is getting finished tomorrow because Wednesday, I'm not going to have a lot of time to read. What is up, you guys? It is Monty, and today I am back again, once again, with the start of another video. This one is every time I'm recording while I'm doing live sprints, I'm always worried that I don't have my mic muted, but it looks like we're good. Anyway, I did finish a book. I finished The Impeachment of Abraham Lincoln. So I was actually able to get the audio from this from Audible. Love that for me. I guess this is what I call it, a hack, not necessarily, but maybe. I guess we could. So I definitely thought that was gonna tip over, but I don't usually pay for Audible because I just get my audiobooks from the library. So anytime that I get a book from Audible, it is oftentimes just like a free credit, because like once a year they'll be like, hey, please come back, because I don't purchase things from them, but I just have an account that just sits there. And I guess because it's the beginning of the year, they were like, here's 3. So I got the audiobook for this, and I was able to listen to this while I was at work, and I wound up giving it 4 stars. I'm going to give it 4 stars. I rounded up Promise Boys, and I enjoyed this just as much as Promise Boys. But me and Professor Carter, we need to fight. Because I don't want to spoil the end of this book, because I actually do think you guys should read it. And it's from an author that I don't see get a lot of, hype and attention and acclaim. And I feel like that's kind of the point of blackathon. Like, is one, yes, to read Black authors, Black American authors, celebrate Black History Month here in America, but also be like, here's a book from a person that you might not read. And there's no shade to like the TBRs that I've seen or like the Instagram spreads that I've seen with like the readily, easily accessible, top of the line, like latest, greatest books that are promoted in the bookish community. And I wouldn't say like this is super under the radar, but it's a little bit of a backlist. It was published a little over a decade ago. So go pick it up. This, like I said in a couple of other videos, does detail the impeachment trial of one Abraham Lincoln, which is really kind of a transposed, in some ways, it's a transposed impeachment trial of Andrew Johnson, his vice president, who is dead in this book because, you know, he's the one that dies and not Lincoln, which does create a new line of succession. And that's part of the drama of the ongoing impeachment trial here, because the president of the Senate is obviously involved. And there's at the beginning of the book, there is a scene where Lincoln's lawyers are like, it's kind of unfair because obviously Benjamin Wade has a outsized motive to want to impeach President Lincoln if it means that he gets to be the next president. And I wouldn't even say, I went into this book really thinking it was going to give me twists and turns and I was going to get to see Abigail Canner really being a lawyer. And I wouldn't say that we do get to see that, but the story that we do get to see, the conspiracy that we get to see her unraveling and exploring with her co-law clerk, what is his name? Jonathan Hilleman? I think that's right. It sounds about right. His last name starts with an H, and he is from a well-to-do northern white family. And there is a little bit of a swirl romance that I personally didn't need in the book set in 1867, but it was interesting, I will say. It was fascinating. I've read a lot of interracial romance in my day. I've seen a lot of interracial romances played out on the page, but not one that takes place in 1867, and not one that I really think grapples with the not only societal realities of this kind of relationship for both parties included, but just details the nuance there that doesn't feel like, ooh, like 3 steps removed from some kind of master-slave dichotomy. It was interesting. It was interesting, and I do think that it was well done. I trust Stephen Carter, which is important because Back Channel also includes a little bit of a swirl romance where the 15 pages that I listened to, where's the camera? That I listened to yesterday definitely have Margot in her position as like a CIA operative having a fake relationship with Kennedy. At least I hope it's fake. I hope it's fake. I don't want to know if it's going to get real later on in this book, which is another thing that he does. Stephen loves a prologue that is connected to the rest of the series, which I have to, or the rest of the book. Also, what he does in this book should have been a series. This is why I'm like, I need to continue, because how this book ends, this is why we need to fight. If I were to book a trip to New Haven right now, I would have to go fight Mr. Carter, because how could he do that? How could he do that to me personally, me specifically? And because I want you guys to go read this, I can't even get into what he does. But I will say that I do think that Stephen, he decides to duck. And I do think that's kind of why I have to dock the book a star, because I think that for the premise to work out, I needed him to fully commit and to fully go into the whole premise of this book, which is an impeachment trial of Abraham Lincoln. And we do get a trial from start to finish, although again, it does take 251 pages for the trial to start. But once the trial starts, every chapter, and this book is like subdivided, which is kind of a classic thing to do, where you'll get, you know, chapter 38, and then it would be like part 1, part 2, part 3 of chapter 38, and then you get chapter 39 or whatever. But in every chapter, we do get to see developments within the impeachment trial. And once a trial is going, it is a lot of the things that I was going into the book looking for. So for me, the second half of the book was much better than the first half. But again, like how he ends it, it has to be Dr. Star. But it was still good. It was very solid. But I do think that even though the nuance was there, there's also like a third act action sequence, which was one part foolish, but also just like, I was kind of here for it. Like, did it involve a Confederate soldier? Absolutely. But you know what? It was worth it. It was worth seeing a Confederate soldier, you know, trying to viva la revolution even after the war had ended. So overall, like I said, do read this. Go have a good time, specifically if you think that you could enjoy something like this. And like I said, I gave it 4 to 5 stars. that means that I was successful in today's endeavor. I told you guys I was going to finish something, and obviously, I feel like this was the obvious choice. Okay, I'm back, and I'm here to do an actual reading update because I read. I know we're all shocked. I remembered how to read. I am once again literate. And I have read the first 144 pages of Back Channel. Now, y'all know my goal was like page 115 or something. I wanted to read like the first 100 pages. No, chapter 14 or page like 105 or something, because I wanted to read the first 100 pages. And I read a lot more of this than I anticipated. So look at that. We are overachievers in this house. I mean, are we really? No, we're really not. I also don't know what I'm going to read tomorrow because I'm reading Back Channel on the sprints. We decided that yesterday, or I decided. There really was no we. I didn't consult you. What that means for my regular reading vlog, I don't know. Because last week I read like something else, I think, or I claimed I was going to read something else. And then during the sprints, I read Promise Boys. And then at the end of the night, I updated you guys about Promise Boys because I finished it in case you couldn't have been at the sprints. And it's probably what's going to happen tomorrow. But for right now, I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about what this book is about. Okay, so Back Channel is, hanging out back there because it's easier than editing in a book cover. So in the first 144 pages, we are following our girl, Margot Jensen. Margot Jensen is a sophomore at Cornell, so she's in upstate New York, living her best life as as best a life as a person can live in the early 1960s. And so she's doing, her best to go to class, do what she needs to do. There was, like I said, a prologue where we saw her interacting with JFK, but because it's a prologue, this is a thing that Stephen L. Carter seems to love to do, is like give you a prologue that's going to like intrigue you and be like, how does Margot Jensen end up in a hotel room with JFK where they're supposedly having an affair with one another, but it's all part of a CIA operation. So then, like we did when I was reading the Impeachment of Abraham Lincoln, we flash back. So now we're with her at Cornell. She's doing her little studies, and she has this professor who was well known for, I think he was like well known for being a spy during World War II, or at least he's well known for his part in World War II, and he had some kind of, system that he was a part of there. And he's also notoriously difficult. And our main character, Margot Jensen, is in the class, and she gets like a compliment from him, which is unheard of because he does not compliment his women students. I told you guys about this the one time I talked about this book. And so it's a little bit of a big deal. And then one day after class, he's like, hey, Margot, I need you to come like see me in my office. I need to have a conversation with you. And it's here that she is introduced to two government agents. And these government agents are like, we have a job for you to do. Have you ever been to this location? And she thinks this location is the location that's in, New York, because if there's one thing Americans love to do, it's name American cities after cities that exist somewhere else. It's a thing that we love to do. And so she's like, yeah, I mean, it's like the local college party town, but, what does it have to do with you guys? You guys obviously from the government. And they're like, no. Not the town that's like down the street, the one that's in Bulgaria. I think they're going to Bulgaria. So, I mean, can you make Harry Potter references? Because I really like, shout out to Victor Crumb. Anyway, I'm a horrible person. Anyway, so she's like, why the fuck would I go to Bulgaria? And they're like, well, we just need you to do this thing for us because it's been requested. Like, I promise we don't want you to be here, but, we have this other asset, and this asset has asked for you. And so for whatever reason, she's like, you know what, whatever, sure, let's do it. Her daddy was in the military. She's feeling patriotic. She's like, yes. I mean, again, like Stephen L. Carter does have like this really strong tendency to like write these black characters who like, I'm not like the other black characters. I can do these things too. And it's like, okay, sure you can. Go for it. Go for it, girl. Go for it. Am I going to go to Bulgaria in the height of the Cold War, go behind the Iron Curtain? Absolutely not. And so then we are following her. She's going on this adventure, and the government is like, hey, just so you know, if you get caught, we are going to deny that we know you. So like if the the international police like figure you out, and they're like, yeah, you're an American intelligence asset, we are not going to come to your aid, we are not going to help you. you're going to have to help yourself. And she is just, a regular college person like you or I would be. And so she's not like some raised from an infant. She's not fucking Bruce Wayne. Okay. She's not Selena Kyle. She's not. She's not Dinah Land. She's not Captain Marvel. She's not even Lashana Lynch in Captain Marvel. Like, she is literally just a regular girl from around the way. And we also find out that the asset that they that requested her is the renowned chess prodigy Bobby, whatever his name is. I think Tobey Maguire played him in a movie one time, so like shout out to him. But it's that guy. So it's another thing that Stephen R. Carter loves to do, where we get a well-known historical figure that our fictional character is going to interact with. And so we also know that her and Bobby have a history because her current boyfriend actually knew Bobby growing up. They're from the same neighborhood. And her current boyfriend is also something of like a chess person, but he's like not, world grandmaster champion, whatever they call each other in chess. And so she's like, okay, I don't really like him, but I already agreed and signed on the dotted line. And obviously the CIA and the FBI have more power than me. So she's going to go along to get along. And we see her go to Bulgaria. And this book is a little bit of what I really wanted the impeachment of Abraham Lincoln to be, because in that, I really wanted to see Abigail Canner get to be the lawyer, even though she didn't have any kind of like reasonable skills to actually study to do law, to practice law, to be Lincoln's lawyer. And while our homegirl here, Margot Jensen, doesn't really have any kind of like knack for actual international diplomatic relations or being a spy or an intelligence officer person, she is getting to do those things. And so we get to see her there. And my favorite part of the book so far is we get to see her actually get apprehended by is she in Bulgaria, or I think she has to be in Bulgaria, but maybe she's in she's somewhere. Okay, it doesn't matter to me. She's over behind the Iron Curtain. Okay. And so she gets apprehended. And so now she's in she's apprehended. She's in this little consulate building, and she's being interviewed by a Soviet KGB officer. And it's just like, it's her against the KGB. And then we get to see her on this like daring escape, which was a little fucking foolish, but you know what? I was here for it. Like, Stephen R. Carter might do some things that are a little bit foolish, but they're always entertaining and they always feel like a little bit true. Because even in the moment, Margot Jensen is like, this is a little good, like too good to be true. Like, it doesn't even make sense that someone like me could be able to evade capture. Because not only does she get out of the building and like almost at the consulate, she is ultimately apprehended and like slowed in her efforts, and she is attached to the Soviet KGB officer that was just interrogating her, and he lets her go, and she's like, well, why would you let me go? Like, this is fishy. And so I appreciate that, like, yeah, she could get away, but it was also like, you were supposed to get away, like you were supposed to do this. And if you hadn't done this, it would have been a little bit embarrassing, and we would have been embarrassed that like we let you do all this. And so where I'm at in the book now, she is back on American soil, and she's going back to class, and she's kind of worried because the entire reason for her trip going there was at a previous chess event, one of the Soviet chess players had approached Bobby. I think his last name is like Singer. I think that's the guy who plays chess, but again, don't quiz me. Had approached him and had offered some kind of information about the Cuban Missile Crisis, that the Soviet Union was definitely going to be placing nuclear arms on the island of Cuba. And this mission was supposed to like be the follow-up and like actual get hard intelligence about this. And it was during this situation that like Bobby, we find out, didn't actually ask for Margot Jensen to be a part of the mission. And so we don't know why Margot was actually on this mission and like who actually pushed for her to be here or any of that situation. But we obviously, from history, we do know that, the Soviet Union was planning to put Russian nuclear missiles on the island of Cuba, which would have been a big problem. And so during her interrogation by the Soviet KGB officer, it's all but, actually I wouldn't say all but, it is definitely plainly stated that yes, the Soviet Union is going to be putting nuclear missiles in Cuba. And so where I'm at in the book now, we get to see Margot Jensen like I don't want to say freaking the fuck out, but like living with this idea that like she knows that there are going to be nuclear missiles in Cuba and that nuclear war is like 3 seconds away, but she can't tell anybody this because it was a highly classified, mission. And even if she were to tell people, like, who's going to believe this random college sophomore from Cornell just happens to know that the Soviet Union is going to be putting missiles there? Because obviously, if missiles were going to be put in Cuba, it would be a big deal and like people would be talking about it. And so she's having nightmares. She's, suffering a little bit, and she's a little on edge because other things were revealed during this trip about the professor that she is in this class with, who is, a World War II person, and how this person connects to her family overall. And so now she's like, she doesn't think that she can really trust this guy, even though she wasn't really trusting this professor all the way before. And we just got to see the Soviet KGB officer come back into Margot's life. And so now we know that he is stateside and he is, doing things he's not really supposed to be doing, but, he's going to do them anyway. And we do get to see glimpses into JFK and like what his briefings are looking like and the information that he's being told. And we are also going back to revisit the CIA person who was in charge of putting together the mission and what she's doing and the intelligence she's collecting and how she's putting some of these pieces together. And all around, this is a much better book, which means that I'm so happy that I only gave The Impeachment of Abraham Lincoln 4 stars, because while I had a good time, back channel is so much better. It is so much better. Like, I am invested, I am intrigued, and I am very much looking forward to getting to the bottom of this and to see how he plays with the history here, to see how similar it is to how we played with history in the last book, and to see how it's going to be different, and just like what the ramifications are going to be, like where are we going from here. And I just know it's going to be good.
And back channel, I did actually listen to a couple of chapters of back channel while I was at work. Homegirl Margot, she finished up her meeting with the KGB operative that was meeting up with her. I told you guys about that last night. So I finished that meeting. And now he's like, you're going to be the back channel. You're going to be the go-between or whatever. And we are going to communicate. And I need you to go talk to the president. And she's like, bitch, how the fuck am I supposed to talk to the president? Like, I'm just a random 19-year-old girl. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing how I'm seeing right now, like, how she's coming up with, like, trying to get a meeting with the president. We're also seeing Kennedy's perspective as he is getting closer and closer to pulling the button. Everyone around him wants him to, like, go full nuclear assault, and he's, like, pumping the brakes as much as he can. So really interesting there. But like I said, I gotta go because I'm live in 15 minutes, and I want to be a little settled, but I know that I'm not going to be. So I'm probably going to repeat it there. So if you're into sprints, you guys saw me talk about how completely out of it I am. And I got to go do this. So I'm going to go.
I have done absolutely no reading since the reading sprints. But it's okay because I made it to 65%. I think at the end of the sprints, I said I made it to 67%. And that was a bold-faced lie because it's definitely 65 in the audiobook. Anyway. I feel like that's what I get for having a white comforter and white pillows. Anyway, what was I saying? I think the new plan is going to be finishing this book right here, back channel. There isn't a lot that I can say to update you because so much of the middle part of this book is our homegirl Margot trying to be this intermediary, trying to be the go-between, trying to avoid all-out nuclear war between America and the Soviet Union. And we're just seeing a lot of that happening. And so when I feel like if I were to say that, it's very boring. But Stephen L. Carter knows how to like write a really intriguing book. So I am intrigued when I'm listening to it and I'm invested in the story. So I don't think that finishing the book tomorrow is going to be much of an issue.
Good morning, America. That was stupid. Anyway. Good morning. It is actually the morning time. It is 8:30. That means I am bright and early. I've been up since like 6:30. Low-key, just laying in bed, not doing a damn thing. But I am showered. I am freshly laundered. I am at Starbucks. You can see it in the background there. So today's going to be productive. It's going to be a productive day. I can just feel it in my bones. I have Back Channel, the hardcover, and Transcendent Kingdom. So some reading is about to get done. About to go sit inside, be all snuggled up and cozy. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's gonna be a good time. So I actually, on the drive over, I was also a good reader. Look at me, look at me, look at me. And I was listening to Back Channel. So I'm now 71% of the way through. So when I was telling everybody I was 67, I'm no longer a lying liar. Look at that. We love growth here. There's still not a whole lot to talk about other than there is a sense of unraveling, which is good. There's like when you're dealing with also, I want to take it back. I think at the beginning, in one of the days, I was talking about this as being like a CIA operation, and the CIA was consulted, but she was actually being run as an as a State Department asset, not a Central Intelligence Agency asset. So, correction there. But obviously, things are happening, and I think I talked about her being like a CIA operative and like colluding with JFK. Again, now there's more of that. Like, you could argue, but all of her contacts, everyone she's ever talked to, has always been from the State Department. So, I do want to correct myself there. But because, you know, we have this little espionage activity, this covert cloak and dagger business, obviously some shit is going to be hitting the fan. There are going to be people who are trying to get to the bottom of this. The entire time there has been this other character that we're following that we get like glimpses at, who is like also a Soviet, also on American soil, also has covert asset people, who is like trying to undo all the work of the Soviet asset that our girl Margot has linked up with. Because I don't, like, this is the thing I don't understand. Like, do I understand a United States Soviet Union like heated war, like fuck the Cold War, let's shoot each other? Yes, I think that would make sense. What is like so confusing to me is the idea that we just really want to go to like nuclear Armageddon. You know what I mean? Like, that to me just doesn't sound like a good time. Like, that to me sounds very sketch. Like, what are we doing here? And even if you wanted to go there, right? Like, I don't understand why you do. I don't understand it. Just thinking of like sheer landmass, I do feel like Russia got the advantage. Like, sure, their population centers are probably, you know, congregated in cities just like us. But if you like bomb Moscow, there's so much of them to go. Like, I mean, obviously the infrastructure is like not there or whatever. You have to think back to like 1960s. Like, overnight, you're not just gonna build like Moscow 2 out in the middle of like wherever far away from there. But it's like they have like space to go and like just set up again, like to avoid nuclear fallout. I don't know where in America you're supposed to be going to avoid nuclear fallout. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, obviously there's places. I live in Kansas, so like there ain't a lot here. But it's just like, where, and so much of this book is interesting because we always get these descriptions of like other people leaving. Because right now, homegirl Margot is in Washington, D.C., allegedly at this little internship at one of the departments. She's like working at a museum, I want to say. But obviously she's really just there to be close to the president. So, because now they're in it's a whole thing. It's also a thing that I think would make a really good streaming show. I think it'd be a cute little 6 to 8 episodes. I don't know if we could get a full 13. I think 13 might be pushing it, but 6 to 8 would be like a nice little sweet spot for this. Or a movie. It could be a movie, but I feel like a movie would be a little bit lackluster for me personally. Let me just do, every time I forget that like Siri just, you start moving around and she thinks she needs to answer a question. So that's where I'm at, and I'm still having a good time. So we're seeing things starting to unravel. We're seeing people in Margot's personal life being attacked because they know that she's working. I feel like they don't know exactly what Margot and the other Soviet person are trying to do other than like avoid nuclear fallout, which I think we can have a nice, let's fisticuff it up, you know? I mean, I personally don't want it, but if I were in their position, I'm like, yeah, sure, like, let's fisticuff it. But nuclear Armageddon? No, like, no, we don't need to do that. We don't need to do that. And what's so wild to me about it is that, like, so many of these people would have seen the actual nuclear bomb, like, go off. Like, World War II is referenced so much here because so many of the people who are alive and, like, in these little covert operations right now in the time period of this book talk about being, you know, either troops or assets during World War II. And so it's like, y'all saw what happened. like firsthand. It's not even like me who just had to like see pictures in a history book, watch a couple documentaries. Like y'all saw what happened. Y'all see it. You are literally watching the fallout still happen from that event. And y'all are like, yeah, let's do it. Like, let's go back and forth with our intercontinental ballistic missiles. Like, let's just do it. Let's just bam, bam. Wild to me. Like, truly unhinged. And I'm sure there are people today who are like, yeah, let's just hit the little nuclear codes. But still, it's doing too much for me. It's doing too much. The idea that we would just like keep making these things is also wild to me. To me personally, like, you want to make a missile, go for it, I guess. Who am I to stop you? But I don't know if it needs to have nuclear capabilities. You know, I don't think anybody needs it. Like, fuck a reduction. Like, let's just get 0. Let's do 0. Like, why do we need them anymore? But I'm gonna go enjoy my coffee, read some books. I just tried to start filming this and took a photo, so that's how this is going. But I have been listening to Back Channel, and so I saw the little fallout of, you know, everyone is out together. We had another little shootout moment. I do feel like there were a couple of more like high action sequences, which is why I think this book would do well as like a little mini series, or like it could be a TV movie, but I don't feel like as a TV movie would be that intriguing. Do you think you need at least you could do it in as little as 3 episodes? I think Sherlock did that. Sherlock had 3 episode seasons for whatever unknown reason. And so it was cute. We got to see the fallout, we got to see the climax, we got to see, you know, thinking on her feet again. I just really like Margot Jensen. I like Margot Jensen a lot more than I liked what was her name? Abigail Canner. I just like her more. I mean, it's not really entirely fair because Abigail Canner is like running around here in petticoats and corsets and horse-drawn carriages, and Margot Jensen is, you know, running around 1963. So like modernity, but like not too modern. I do think like some of the issues that she gets herself into could definitely have been solved with the use of like a cellular phone. Like some of these issues, like not everything, but a couple of things could have been. And like there were a couple of moments where like, oh my goodness, is there going to be miscommunication, ships passing in the night? But it also did remind you of like, just damn, like we are a little bit too connected. In 2023. So that was an interesting little thing to ponder about as I listened to her adventures. But between the 2 that I've read so far, I would recommend Back Channel to more people because I think there's a wider appeal. And I think that I would recommend the Impeachment of Abraham Lincoln to a much narrower, I don't like saying that word, audience. But both are good. Like Stephen L. Carter, excellent. I'm very much looking forward to reading The Emperor of Ocean Park next week, because as we all know, I will not be reading that today. I won't be reading it tomorrow. At this point, we're going to be very lucky if I can even get to Transcendent Kingdom, if we're being 100% honest. If we're being 100% honest, we might be very, very lucky if I get to that book, let alone something else. So, and when I say something else, I mean Rootless. Like, Rootless is not looking too good for you, girl. It's not looking too good. Like, obviously, I could read it in the evening time, because, again, it's not even noon yet. But, I'm starting to, I would not be holding my breath on that one. So, hate that for me. But I'm going to go because I need to actually, you know, consume some food. So I'm going to go upstairs to eat, unwind a little bit, relax. Like I haven't been relaxing all day. But I'm going to go to my home and relax. What is up? I feel like I owe y'all an explanation. So here's what happened. I know I've already talked about Back Channel. I'm definitely giving it 5 out of 5 stars.
What is up, you guys? I'm still not entirely sure that I love the fact that my messy, unmade bed is in the frame of all these videos. But you know what? At this rate, there's not a whole lot that I can do about it. So, Transcendent Kingdom, we finished yesterday. I'm really over here trying to grab The Emperor of Ocean Park because I did listen to this at work. I'm 9% of the way through this, which I believe is actually his debut novel, an extraordinary fiction debut. Yes. So in this, we are following. Is it going to give me the main character's name here? Yeah. So we are following his son Talcott, who everyone just calls Tall. He has another name that he's going by, but like it's not important. So I just need you to know that we're following Tall. And he is a lawyer professor. He's a professor of law at some seemingly prestigious university. His father was an appellate court judge on one of the, circuits out there with the appealing and things. And at one point, he was Ronald Reagan's nominee to the Supreme Court. And he ultimately had to have his name pulled from consideration because of an associate that he had that, like, was a little unsavory. And so he was instead replaced by Antonin Scalia, who, you hate to see it. You really hate to see it. So we're following Talls, and we know at the beginning of this book that he is dead. And it's his death that is sort of bringing everyone together. And by everyone, I mean his son Tall, and he has some other children. Nobody in this family gets along, and it's partly because their father was a conservative. Obviously, if Ronald Reagan was going to appoint you to the Supreme Court, you are not out here doing, I don't know, great things. But that also means that I think they're talking about there being two black people on the Supreme Court. So that means it would have been Thurgood Marshall and this fictional person, which is interesting because the judge that they are here talking about is really giving Clarence Thomas vibes. But this man would have predated Clarence Thomas, because isn't Clarence Thomas a Bush? Let me just check. We have the power of the internet right here. Clarence Thomas. I'm pretty sure it was like, HW. Yeah, so interesting. Since 1991. Thankfully, the fictional black man who had been on the court did not seemingly sexually assault anybody. He just had an associate that may or may not have been a murderer who had connections to the CIA. The name of the associate in this book, I'm like 98% sure, also appeared in Back Channel. Like, I'm 98%. Like, I don't know if this is like an actual, like, real person, because so much of what Stephen L. Carter seems to do is take real people and give a story, give a yarn about them. So I'm interested to see if this person is like real and if I'm just like going crazy, but I'm almost like 98% certain that the person that cost Judge Oliver, is that his name? Yes, Judge Oliver Garland, his Supreme Court nomination was also in Back Channel as somebody that was in like the State Department or working at the CIA. It doesn't matter. But now Judge Oliver Garland is dead, and Tall's sister, I think it's his older sister, believes that their father was murdered. Again, partly because he was a conservative firebrand who gave a lot of talks about, the radical left was out to get me. The radical left, they buried me. They buried Nixon. He was really close friends with Nixon. Nixon was actually the person that plucked him from wherever and gave him a seat on the federal judiciary. But so Reagan could be like, oh, this federal judge, let me make a Supreme Court nominee. And so he was actually really sad that Nixon died before him, because that meant that he had to go to Nixon's funeral and Nixon couldn't come to his funeral. Although why you would want Richard Nixon at your funeral is wild to me. So this fictional judge was like going around talking about how the radical left canceled Nixon, the radical left canceled him. And, it's just bad. And his son Tall isn't even sure that his father believed some of these things, so much as like his father saw that this was a very lucrative way to shuck and jive, and he was going to get that shmoney. And that's interesting. Mr. There's always something in a Stephen L. Carter book that has me side-eyeing. In the impeachment of Abraham Lincoln, it was the number of times I had to read the word negress. I don't care how time appropriate it was, it still took me out every time. And here, Tall has this like I don't get it, but he has this thing where he will constantly refer to fellow black people as like the darker nation. You're like, oh, this person was black, but this person associated with them is also a member of the darker nation of my people. And it's just like, is this a thing that I'm just like, unaware of? Do people really walk around talking in this way? Because if I'm only, like I said, 9% of the way through this, and at this point, if you took a shot every time you had to read or hear the phrase "the darker nation," you would be in liver failure at 9%. Like, it's a little unreal, but I am having a good time. Tall at this point does not really seem to believe that his father was murdered. Like, he's like, my dad had a heart attack, and his sister is like, you know how easy it is to fake a heart attack? Like, do you? Because I don't think you do. I did not film a clip this morning just because I didn't read, and it feels very silly to come in and like do a little intro clip when I didn't read. But I have since gotten to 22% of the Emperor of Ocean Park. The plot thickens. The man, the priest, the pastor who did the funeral service for the late judge has just been found murdered, and they suspect that there was some drug use involved. Our main character, Talcott, whose name is Talcott, but he goes by Misha. I remember now that there was a whole section of the book about how he has like this Russian diminutive as a nickname, but that's neither here nor there. And so he is getting pulled further into this situation where like maybe his father was murdered, but he doesn't really have anything concrete. We know that some people presented themselves as FBI agents who are not really FBI agents, and so like that's a third, not a third, but that's an added complication to the mix. But there's really not a whole lot to say about this book other than I will add that in addition to the Paler Nation, in addition to the Darker Nation, we now have had references to the Paler Nation. So like Talcott is just his head is interesting. I also think that Stephen L. Carter does something that I typically don't like in a book, and that is it's just like walls of text. I don't notice this so much because I'm listening to the audiobook, which was recorded so long ago that it was recorded for CDs. And so every couple of times, not every couple of times, but every so often I get to an end of a section or like the end of a chapter or like the middle of a chapter, and it's just like this continues on book or CD2, CD3, CD4, and then it just like goes to the next track because I'm listening on Libby. And I mean, I do think that it would be a little bit unreasonable for me to be like, oh yeah, you guys could just like go in and edit that for when you digitized it, but they did not. They did not do that, which I think is reasonable. I think it would be entirely unreasonable for them to like re-edit something that was already edited once. So that's a fun little fact. But I did just get back from seeing Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and I just want to say that Jonathan Majors, he's an actor. He be acting. I know, like right now, we're all focused on Angela because Angela's finally gonna get her little Oscar. I think this is like the unpopular opinion, but I definitely think that Angela's speech, which is why she's being nominated for being, she has two big speeches in Wakanda Forever, in case you haven't seen it. And I think that both of the speeches that she has are more impactful in the way they're cut in the trailer. I think how they were edited in the movie, they fall a little flat, or because they had been used so much to narrate the trailer, when you see the movie, they fall a little flat. But you know, good for her, you know, getting her little Oscars. Fingers crossed. Who knows anymore, but I think she's gonna get it. But Jonathan Majors, he said, you know what, I can act too. They're not gonna nominate him because the third act of this movie goes ain't no way Jonathan Majors getting acting nominations. But in the first half, there are some really quiet moments, and I think he does them really well. Michelle Pfeiffer, also a standout. And everyone else, who is that? The guy who plays Hank Pym. I forget what, as I would Mike, is it Douglas? Somebody Douglas, I don't know. And I'm too lazy to Google, but he's doing a good job. I like seeing Hank and Janet. I think that Hank and Janet are low key a better couple than Hope and Scott. Like who cares about Hope and Scott when Janet and Hank are like right there? And I think it'd be one thing if Hank and Janet had like nothing to do in the movie and they were like yesteryears Wasp and Ant-Man, but they felt very capable. What is up, you guys? Yeah, I'm in focus. I feel like every time I come in this shirt, I have fucking toothpaste on my sleeves because I'm a gross person. But it is what it is at this point. But I have finished The Emperor of Ocean Park by Stephen L. Carter. We did it. I'm done. We're dusted. I'm going to give this, I don't know, like 4 stars. I just really like Stephen L. Carter. Like, I'm not the person to ask to like drag this man's books because even though they're a little bit boring and a little bit dull, like I'm still like he still finds ways to gag me in the middle of it. So we the twists and the turns and the journey that we went on to find why Judge Garland was out here doing some things that he was doing. Immaculate. Could not have guessed it. Couldn't have seen them coming. They were true, like actual surprises. And then the things that were like right in front of your face, they still felt like when they were finally revealed and discussed, it felt worth the time that it took to finally get that piece of information. Again, I feel like this is a debut, so in some ways it's like the weakest one, but and technically they're all historical fiction at this point. Like this is set in like the early 2000s, like think 2000, 2001, because Bush is definitely president. Mr. Baby Bush definitely president in this book, given some of the things that are happening here. But aside from that, and Back Channel was set during the Cold War, and the impeachment was obviously set during Lincoln's presidency. I feel like like Lincoln was definitely the weakest link for me, just because of like the time period. It definitely read the most historical fictiony of the historical fiction that I read from Stephen L. Carter. The Emperor of Ocean Park was good. It was good. It was a really solid look at the early 2000s, at this man who had this like very questionable marriage. Him and Kimmer, their their marriage is definitely the B plot of the book. The A plot is definitely trying to figure out what happened to Judge. Maybe they're no, yeah. So the A plot is what's happening to Judge Garland, who killed him, what's happening in his past, why is everything so shady. Then the B level plot is everything that is unraveling in our main character Misha's, like he's the son of the judge, in Misha's life. Everything that's happening with him. That includes his marriage, but there's also some other things that are happening, like his professional life at school, his relationship with some of his family members. That's all explored. And then the C level plot that is tied back into the A plot is Misha had a younger sister who died when they were like teenagers. And so that was also something that was pretty formative for the judge. And the judge was never quite the same after that. And what happened to that daughter that died is definitely directly tied into if Judge Garland was murdered, why he was murdered, and the motivating factor there. There were twists and reveals that happened in this book that, again, like I said, I did not see coming. I would not have guessed. You couldn't have paid me to assume that was going to be a thing that happened. And just like Stephen, so the book kind of like started to wrap up around like page like 580 or so, and this book is 650-ish pages. So there's a good chunk of like 20 30 pages where you're reading the book, and it definitely feels like the book is going on longer than it needs to, because it feels like, okay, we had the climax and we've sort of wrapped everything else up, so like why are we still here? And then there's like an additional like he like double taps, I guess you could say. And the double tap, it got me because I definitely didn't see that coming. The character that was doing things with the gun, I said, why are you here with a gun, character? I don't want to spoil it, but it was like, it was good. It was solid. I said, okay, I'm here for it. I'm here for this latest development. So Stephen L. Carter will like get you, like he really is going to use all the pages. Do I think that he objectively uses all of the pages super well? No, I still think that Back Channel is probably, if you only want to read one Stephen L. Carter, it's the Stephen L. Carter to read. I think it has everything. It's excellent. And again, this is a debut, so I think that it's understandable that like it's still the weakest. Obviously, there's room for growth, which is why I'm going to give it a 4-star. And Back Channel will remain the only 5-star. But I'm happy to have finally finished this. I am sad because it's the last of his books that that I can have physically. All the rest I'm gonna have to read ebook or audio. So that's what I got. That's how we're gonna end tonight.
So today I started listening to Invisible by Stephen L. Carter. This is one of his nonfiction books. It's actually about his grandmother, Eunice Carter, who was a lawyer. And in the prologue, we find out that she used this mobster's like prostitution ring to bring him down. So we're going to learn about her and how she was the granddaughter of slaves. So that's interesting. I feel like I've done a lot of fiction reading this month, so I wanted to include one of his nonfiction titles, and this just happened to be one of the titles that was available on Hoopla. Actually, it's not available on Libby. I probably, depending on how quickly I listen to this, but today is what, like the 20th, the 21st? I think it's the 20th. Yes, because the library is closed. That's why I'm remembering today's the 20th. So we have 8 days left, and I think, depending on how quickly I listen to this and how quickly I can listen to something else, I might be able to end up bang out 2 more Stephen L. Carter books.
And I have listened to 46% of Stephen L. Carter's Invisible. There's a subtitle. Let me find it. Invisible, the Forgotten Story of the Black Woman Lawyer Who Took Down America's Most Powerful Mobster. Which I do feel is accurate. The first, I don't know, 15% maybe, I think that's when I updated Goodreads, we are getting a lot of information about her parents, because her parents were also really interesting people. Like I said, she is the granddaughter of a man who ran away from slavery 3 times, and on his 3rd attempt, he bought his way out. Then he was a person who amassed some semblance of wealth before ultimately being I don't want to say exiled to Canada, but he did link up with, John Brown, noted abolitionist, right before his attack on Harper's Ferry. So, if I had managed to be at that meeting and not be hanged, I too would probably flee to Canada for the rest of my days. Just saying. Just saying. But also, John Brown, not bad company to be in. Not like of the white people. Not bad company. Anyway, let me not. Anyway, so we got that little bit of information. We met her mother, who spent some time giving talks and like going around as a person who was closely affiliated with the WYMCA, I guess the YWCA, the YMCA, but the women's chapters. She wrote a book about her experiences during the First World War as part of a Black contingent, and she chronicled the lives of the Black soldiers overseas and how they were treated during wartime. And so she came back and she was something of a noted person herself. There's some noted tension between the forgotten story of the Black woman lawyer. Her name is Eunice sounds about right. Eunice had a younger brother who was not the favored child. Eunice was the favored child. There's talks about how when her father, who was also I don't want to say a spokesperson for the YMCA, because he did other things, but that was like one of his big things. Anyway, yeah. Eventually he like came down sick with tuberculosis, and he spent a lot of his time in upstate New York, and he was always looking forward to when his daughter would like leave Smith and like come home for the holidays, because he would get to see her. And her younger brother was also an intelligent person, but they just didn't love him as much. They didn't love him as much. There was also some like family drama because he seems to have like been a Democrat before it was like cool to be a Democrat. And Eunice herself, she ran for office. We just had that little era of her life where she went off to college. Then she herself was sick. There seems to be I can't remember if it was Eunice or her mother, but one of them was thought to have had a hysterectomy, and that's why they were sick leave for some period of time. I think it was Eunice. I don't think it was her mother. But she kind of just like floated around until she got married to a dentist. And during this time, she had also made a name for herself as being something of an orator. She was in law school, which seemed to have grown in popularity during the First World War, when some of the more Catholic-leaning institutions were like, damn, we don't have nobody enrolled because everybody's at war. Which you don't really think about, but like, yeah, I mean, if everyone's off fighting World War, one, who's supposed to go to law school, but apparently the woman. So they started catering to some of the inner city folk. And so she went to Fordham Law School, where she had to take a year off because her son became sick, but she came back. She passed the bar on her second try, which, makes me, I'm never going to take the bar, but, I always like when I see like people who went on to accomplish great things, like stumble a little, like failing the bar. You love to see it. It's also interesting to see Eunice in these same circles as people who would go on to be, like Attorney General, Secretary of State, noted people. Like, you always know that there's a Black person in the background there, but it's just nice to see Eunice there. And I'm just having a good time. I said this on Instagram. It's reminded me a little bit of like Eric Larson, and that it's a little bit narrative-y nonfiction. But I think that Stephen O. Carter's just good. I think he's just a good author. And I don't think Eric Larson is a good author. Like, I don't think Eric Larson is bad. I just think his book is boring. And to be fair, I've only read The Devil in the White City, but I just feel like that book is completely imbalanced, and it feels like two things that are happening in the similar location at a similar time. And that's why they're going to be in a book together, but they didn't really feel like they needed to be in a book together. You know what I mean? And this, because we are focusing so much on Eunice and her family, and it's being told by one of her descendants, I can just feel the love. I just feel the love, and I'm having a good time with it, and I'm not particularly upset by anything, and it just feels like a good time. Like, it just feels like a good time. It feels like I am unearthing a part of American history that I hadn't thought to think about, really, because I don't really spend a lot of my time thinking about the mafia, aside from the fact that they're like crime people and probably racist. But we're finally in the era of her life where she is able to, where we are focusing on her bringing down the mob. Like, there's a prologue at the beginning of the book where it talks about her bringing down the mob, but where we are now chronologically, we have caught up with that. So she's gone to law school. There was her run for office where she was unsuccessful, but it's all of these like small things that make it to where when this special prosecutor is brought in, her being part of the thing, like in the mix, there's context for like why she's here. But not that I necessarily think you need to have context, but it does maybe you do. Maybe you do, because I don't think that Eunice Hutton Carter, this Black lady lawyer whose family fled Atlanta after riots and who had to see her home in Harlem burned. Well, actually, her home didn't burn down, but like the neighborhood of Harlem, there was some rioting there, which is also how she got put on the map, because then she was put on the little committee to investigate the riots, and she was like, well, not she, the whole committee was like, there's a systemic problem here. And it is always nice to see the history, times have changed, but they haven't really. Like, times have changed, but they haven't really. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Let's just go with that. But yeah, so far, Invisible, the forgotten story of the Black woman lawyer who took down America's most powerful mobster, is a good time. There's been like 2 chapters where we look at the man, the mobster, this Italian guy who she's going to take down. And I like that, we're focusing on Eunice, but we do get this like glimpse at like who this man is, how he was able to come into power, why he was like so important to take down, and how he had so much of New York City, so much of the, I guess, the underbelly, the crime circuit under him, and why he was like the linchpin in all of it. So I'm having a good time. I definitely recommend it if you are looking for some good nonfiction to pick up. If you're trying to think about titles to file away for Nonfiction November, I definitely would recommend so far Invisible, the forgotten story of the Black woman lawyer who took down America's most powerful mobster. What is up, you guys? It's me and my webcam, because I'm honestly too lazy to break out the good camera, because there's really not a whole lot I have to say about Invisible. This book, one second actually. I'm sure I can add this in. So I finished this book over here, Invisible, the forgotten story of the Black woman lawyer who took down America's most powerful mobster. And the portion of her like preparing for trial to do this was a lot shorter. This was a lot smaller of the book than I anticipated it being. This also feels like, I feel like people definitely know Eunice Carter I definitely cannot imagine that Eunice Carter was moving in the circles that she was moving in, that she had the friends and acquaintances that she had, that she was doing things like she was a small part of the Harlem Renaissance. She was friends with like literally everybody. Like literally everybody. She was a important person in like two different presidential campaigns, who was going out here on behalf of, you know, the black people, the black Republicans, because she couldn't be unlike her brother. Her brother was a noted leftist and was on J. Edgar Hoover's shit list. So like the Carters were movers and shakers. They were movers and shakers. So I feel like Eunice Carter was a person that was unknown to me, but I am gagged that if like Eunice Carter is somebody, well, I guess to be fair, those like Hidden Figure ladies, they were literally putting people on the moon, and I do not recall seeing them in the Apollo 11 movie. Not that I've seen it in a minute. You know, I think I was in grade school the last time I watched it, but mayhaps. But Eunice Carter just feels like somebody that like history could not forget based on like everything she was doing, and it wasn't even that long ago. Like it was literally in the 1920s into the 1930s. But then throughout FDR's time in office, she was again out here on the campaign trail in the 40s when Truman was running. Like she didn't die until the 70s. Like this is a woman who lived very recently, who it's just wild. It's just wild. It also reminds you that like her grandparents were slaves and she knew them. She talked to them, and her grandson, you know, Stephen L. Carter, is now out here. Although it also does make sense, like how Stephen L. Carter is out here, a whole Yale law professor, when the Carters again, movers and shakers. It's wild. It's a wild time. The Invisible. So we do get her time taking down this mobster, but we also get to see all of the other just like incredible things that she was a part of, the circle that she was moving in, the people that she knew, the kinds of impact that you would, again, the kind of impact and legacy that I it's not even if she was like a white woman, like if she was just white, period. Like it's not that came out wrong. It's not even like if she was a white man. If she was just like white, period, there's no way that people could forget Eunice Carter. Like Eunice Carter is the kind of person that definitely book reports on, definitely self-indulgent little mini series on. It's just, if you are again only going to read one Stephen L. Carter that I have read this month, Invisible is the one to do. It is nonfiction, but it does have a very, maybe saying it has a narrative quality is a little overselling it, but I definitely think that it's the most approachable of his books. It's the one that feels the most like anybody can get into this, anybody can read it and have a good time. It's just, there's no flaws here as far as I'm concerned. So this is easily easiest one to give 5 out of 5 stars to. Yeah, no complaints, no complaints. It also does make me retroactively appreciate Abigail Canner's life over in the impeachment of Abraham Lincoln. I don't think that he was drawing on his grandmother when he was writing her, because they are, I guess, like in retrospect, they have some similarities. But Abigail Canner's also, I feel that maybe she's not that different. She's kind of, I mean, Eunice was an actual lawyer. She actually did get to practice law for a long time. She set up, she was a pretty big person in the, well, when she was just running her own little shingle, like she was just like Eunice Carter, lawyer at law or whatever. She was not doing so great, but she did get put on this little select committee to take down the mob. And it was her ideas that really got the man arrested. It was her theory of the case that like really sealed the deal, even though she did not get to prosecute him. She was a little bit involved in the appeals process for that guy. And when the actual lead man, you know, Prosecutor Dewey, who would go on to run for governor and run for president twice, she was involved with both campaigns. But she set up some like child thing happening at the prosecutor's office. So she did some, again, movers and shakers. So good, very good. Definitely go read it. But with that said, I'm probably gonna wrap this up here because I want you to read this. I don't want to like get into it too much. But definitely you should check it out. I know that, Black History Month is almost over, but, Nonfiction November, right around the corner. You can read these books any time of year. And again, if you are only going to pick up one of the books that I recommend, I am going to say that Invisible should be the one they should pick up because I think that it is the most intriguing. And I think that if you read this and you go on to read some of his other books, I do think that it colors some of the characters that he chooses to write in those books.
Hello. It's like overcast today, which I'm vibing with, not gonna lie. Not gonna lie. It also means it's gonna be super cold tomorrow, which not loving, but I do live in Kansas, so I'm not terribly surprised that the weather is doing this little yo-yoing thing. But we're not here to discuss the weather. I am about to go to work. Today's Stephen L. Carter that I'm going to start. I haven't decided if I'm going to actually read this at work or if I'm going to read it when I get home from work or if I just have it lined up before the end of the month, and it's going to be Jericho's Fall, which I think is supposed to be like a legit thriller. All of the books that I've read have had like an element of suspense. There's like a third act action sequence. There's a mystery element at play. But I think Jericho's Fall is supposed to be like a real, true thriller. It starts off with this man, I think it's Jericho Ainsley, and he's like on his deathbed, and he brings this person. He used to work at the CIA, and he brings this woman, Beck something or other, to his like deathbed, and is like, I have this thing for you, and it sets off this chain reaction. The reason I chose Jericho's Fall is because I believe the audiobook for this one was only 9 hours, and the other ones like White Palace, White New England, and something else, they were like 21 hour audiobooks. And I don't think I have time to do that. I don't think I have time for a 22-hour audiobook at this point in my life. At least if I'm going to like get it in before the end of the month. I just didn't want to risk it. So they're going to get read at some point before the end of the year. I'm going to listen to them. But Jericho's Fall is going to be up next.
What is up, you guys? I'm here. I actually have another little Panera thing because I get the most out of my little free trial with the Sips membership. You ain't gonna tell me that I'm not gonna get another little free lemonade today. But I've been home for a little bit now, and for a lot of my day I actually did not do any reading. I got to work and I had my headphones, I had every intention, and it really was not until I was leaving to go to Panera that I was like, oh wait, I should probably get some reading in. And so I turned off the YouTube video that I had been watching. I've been really into Skip Intro because he has a series on propaganda, and y'all know that I love a good propaganda show. And so I had to I had to go and moralize and feel a little bit good about myself. Anyway, I did listen to the first 13%. So like the first hour and a half of Jericho's Fall by my favorite Black author, Stephen L. Carter. Can I call him my favorite Black author? I don't know. I think he's the Black author I've read the most books from. And so far, all I know is that we are following our main character, Rebecca, as she goes to Jericho Ainsley's Aspen compound. Jericho Ainsley, I believe, from what I have gathered in the little history of this book, and I think that Jericho Ainsley probably was also like Jack from the other books and has appeared in multiple Stephen L. Carter works, and I'm not the girl with the shoestring. Anyway, Jericho Ainsley was the former director of the Central Intelligence Agency, and then he moved on, and I think he was working in some capacity in the White House, definitely as a sort of presidential advisor role. And so he and Rebecca met at some point while Rebecca was a young, naive college student, and they had some kind of affair. I don't believe an affair in the terms of like Jericho was married, but in the terms that it was brief and it was fleeting, and it definitely raised some suspicion. So now Jericho Ainsley is on his deathbed, and Rebecca has been summoned, and while she has refused other summonses, she is understanding that like this man is dying, and so let me go and see what's happening. And so she's on her way out there, and she definitely believes that she is being followed. And she gets there, and some weird things are happening at this Aspen compound. But so far, Jericho is not dead. But I do believe that by the 2 hour mark, this man will be dead, because I was correct in assuming that this book is only 10 hours. So I do think that while I did not finish this book today, it is definitely within the realm of possibility for me to do so. If not tomorrow, then definitely on Friday. I am enjoying it. Like I said, this is the shortest Stephen L. Carter book that I've read. All the other ones that I've listened to on audio have been over 20 hours. So I think this is probably going to clock in around like 300-page range, which again, very short for Stephen L. Carter. I'm having a good time.
Good morning. It's very different. I get to say good morning for once. And I'm coming home, so I'm taking the sunglasses off, not putting them on. It's a wild adventure, but I was up early. And I said, you know what I should do? I should get some grocery shopping out of the way today so I can just come home and relax tomorrow. And that's what I did. I got the little few, it's actually not that few. Mostly snacks. Mostly snacks. It's embarrassing. But you know, I feel like that's the fun thing about adulthood, is that I can buy snacks with the groceries. Anyway, y'all don't care. Or maybe you do, but I don't care to show it. One of the two. But I did listen to a book. I was a good booktuber. I was walking around Target pushing my little shopping cart and listening to the audiobook Jericho's Fall. So I'm now 29% of the way through this. So that's what, 16%? I'm okay with that. Oh, and I got my Panera, so I got my little caffeine. It's a good day. I got my caffeine before noon. I have undecided if I'm going to go get another one on my way to work, but that's a bridge I'm going to cross in like, 2-ish hours? But, like I said, I've been listening to 16 more percent. So I'm now 30% into this. And I definitely went into this knowing that it's a shorter book. The book is only like 10 hours long. I was expecting something fast-paced. I was expecting fast-pacedness. And maybe that was a lot. Maybe that was a lot for you to expect from a Stephen L. Carter book, because Stephen L. Carter, I don't think he does fast-paced, and I don't even think that the books are slow. I think the book just takes its time, and whatever time the book needs, he gives it. And I'm intrigued still. So we are still with Rebecca on this mountaintop with Jericho Ainsley, former director of the CIA and former Secretary of Defense. And so she's there. He's on his deathbed. He also has two of his daughters. He has a son. His son is not there. And so it's her, the two daughters, and him. Only her and him really get along, because the daughters are still upset with her because they view her as breaking up the marriage. Even though, much like in Back Channel, we have a young girl. She was like 19 at the time. She was getting involved with this man who was a professor. And so they're like, you're a home-wrecking whore. And she's like, bitch, I was 19. I was a child. I'm in therapy for this shit. Like, my therapist don't want me here, but I'm here. So that's her perspective. And the daughters are still like, yeah, but you're still a home-wrecking whore. So we don't fuck with you. We don't fuck with you, Rebecca. And you know what? I hate that for them. But you know, the drama is giving. It's giving. It's giving a little bit. I will also say that maybe some of this writing is a little fatphobic. Maybe some of the writing is a little fatphobic. And when I say a little bit, I mean like maybe a lot of it. But you know, call me a hater. Call me a hater. I'm gonna keep reading. I'm gonna keep reading, because one of the daughters is, you know, she's a little chubby, if you will. She is not a skinny girl. But even, like, I feel like the skinny character, Rebecca is probably the skinny character that's, like, okay. But there's a fat sister and a skinny sister. And the skinny sister is giving, like, it's giving Kate Moss. It's giving crackhead. It's giving, she just is smoking down cigarettes to stay thin. And so I feel like it's not, like, a glamorous depiction of the skinny people either. So I am torn. I'm torn here. But like I said, it's very slow paced. We've had a doctor arrive. Jericho Ainsley definitely thinks this man is out to get him. But we have to remember that this man has like cancer in his brain. So like, he a little paranoid. And he was in the CIA, so he's a little bit paranoid from there. because he definitely thinks that the director before him was taken down, even though the autopsy came back like ain't shit happened to this man but a heart attack. It was totally normal. No drugs. Wasn't a hit job by the Soviets. You're Gucci. But Jericho has been paranoid for a really long time. And so we know that Jericho has like this little, or he claims to have set up a situation where if he dies, whether he's taken out or, you know, he has a heart attack himself and it's just gone, that when he dies, everybody's secrets are getting revealed. He got the tea on everybody and he's spilling it all as soon as he croaks. And so there are people out here who are like, but no, you're not. You're not going to do that. But they also don't know, like, what about them is going to get spilled. And so we have the situation where they're on this mountaintop in Colorado. And Rebecca is also slowly getting a little, like, I think the reader's supposed to be like, maybe she's also going paranoid. Maybe she's thinking people are following her. But even the town sheriff is like, we have these two strangers and they're being weird. They're being real suspect. And so it's really easy as the reader to be like, yeah, Rebecca, you are hearing stuff in the static. The helicopter is following you. That red car was on your tail. Like, it's probably the most atmospheric that Stephen L. Carter has been. But when I say atmospheric, I don't want y'all to think like, oh yeah, like it's a lot. It's not a lot. But for Stephen, as someone who has been with him all month, it's a little bit more than what he's been giving. And so I do appreciate that, specifically because this is a little bit earlier in his career. And I do think that having a book that is 30% on this mountaintop with a limited cast of characters that are involved is a strength. Because often what happens with the Stephen L. Carter book is that the characters become exponential. Like in The Emperor of Ocean Park, it was about this man, Misha, Mr. Talcott, and his dead father, and it quickly ballooned into this big thing. In The Impeachment of Abraham Lincoln, you had Abigail Canner and the law office, so that was like three other people, and it ballooned into this other thing. In Back Channel, it was our main girl, oh my god, what was her name? It started with an Margot. We had Margot, and it ballooned into this big thing where you had Soviet agents and Soviet double agents and people in the CIA working against the State Department and the State Department characters. It ballooned into this big thing. And so right now I'm appreciating that in 30% it's really been Jericho, Rebecca, the two daughters, and the town sheriff has popped in. The doctor has popped in. So we got like 7 characters. Not a lot of characters. I do eventually, because I think the synopsis talks about her going on the run. We also know that Rebecca has a daughter that is not living, but she sent her daughter off to stay with her mother in Florida while she went to go visit this man because her daughter is like, I think her daughter's like 13 or so. Like, not quite. Wherever her daughter is, it's at a stage in her life where maybe she's younger than 13 because she's old enough to like communicate and be a person, but not quite old enough for Rebecca to be like, yeah, I'm gonna leave you at home for a couple of days. But also, that's a great way to have CPS all on you. DCFS will love to come up in here and be like, oh, your mom went to Colorado and you've been here for a week by yourself? Yeah, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. So we know that she does have a family connection that she is gonna be like, oh, I gotta save the world. I gotta get out of this mess that I'm in. So I'm looking forward to that part of the story. And as the closer we get to 50%, I'm sure it's not going to be, you know, page turning, ooh, action flick. But Stephen L. Carter, he does like a third act action sequence. And Back Channel, there was a shootout in like Washington, D.C. between Margot and the Soviets and the double agents. And there was a big kerfuffle there. And then in The Impeachment, we had a Confederate conspiracy that was getting played out in a train yard, and that was exciting. Emperor of Ocean Park didn't really have a big third act action sequence, but it was also his debut, so it's fine. I didn't need it. It was fine without it. But this one I'm expecting, just because it is a little bit shorter and it is marketed a little bit more like a thriller, that I'm assuming I'm gonna get some thrilling sequences that I'm looking forward to seeing.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. We are going to start today's little conclusory note off on a high note because As y'all know, I went grocery shopping this morning, and I got home and I was watching the clothes there, and it got to be about time for me to leave for work. And I said to myself, you know what, Monty, you should go to the little independent, used, non used, like new bookstore, because I think you should just do that today. I think you should go treat yourself, just go walk around, kill a little bit of time before you have to go to work. And y'all know that I have been, I wouldn't say that I've been on like a book buying ban, but my relationship with purchasing books that I have not read is is better now. I really don't buy books that I haven't read anymore, which can be an issue because the last time I went to this bookstore, there was a book there that I really wanted to read. And I said, oh, I'll just get it from the library. And then I went to the library and my library did not have it. But I said, you know what, let me go kill some time before work. I'm just going to, see what they have. I'm going to browse. And if they have the thing that I'm looking for, then I'll get it. And if I don't, then I don't. I also want to say that I went in and they had the recovered Sarah J. Maas. And just based on how thick some of those books are, I feel like they got the good paper. Because the new cover of like Kingdom of Ash, which is already a thick ass book, is like double the size. Tower of Dawn looks like it's the appropriate size. Empire of Storms looks like it's the appropriate size. Empire of Storms has like Bible thin pages, and so does Tower of Dawn, and so does Kingdom of Ash. Like both of those books should be the size of Kingdom of Ash, but so that's why I know I'm gonna have to get those recovers in my life. But today I went and they finally, after months of not having this book, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, it's here. It don't have that ugly ass book of the month on the corner. It don't got the ugly ass book of the month shit on the. It's just here, and now I own it. And yeah, I'm very much looking forward to reading this again and to annotating and just getting my little grubby hands on a physical edition of this book. That's the high note for today. Because actually, one second, let me be janky again, because I don't want to do this later. So, this book that y'all can't see, but I am adjusting the size of it roughly. So now y'all can see. Wait. Now, Jericho's Fall. Do I hate this book? Absolutely not. I don't hate it. And because this is like the last Stephen L. Carter that I'm reading for the month, and because this is going to not only function as today's daily vlog, but like the end of something like a larger segment of, my little Stephen L. Carter vlog, I am sad that we're going out like this because Invisible is so good. And it's not even that Jericho's Fall was bad. I just really wanted, like, I really expected that this was going to read like a thriller, like as like this, oh, the CIA is out to get me. And we really just stayed in this Colorado town the entire time. And we investigated this mystery. We investigated this thriller for sure. The third act was definitely high octane. People are coming into the community. Our girl Rebecca is under fire. She's under siege. She's having to do things that she doesn't think are possible. Everyone is like banding together. It's just a little, I don't know. I feel like if this were to be adapted, and I feel like this is easily one of the easier ones to adapt, the ending, I wouldn't say it would have to be rewritten. It would have to be a little bit reworked. It just, I don't know. Because I hesitate to say the book should have been longer, because it definitely could not have been any longer than it was. I think that it really hits like the sweet spot in terms of length, based on like what Stephen L. Carter is attempting to do and what he is capable of executing given the nature of the plot that he has given. I think that you have to go in with like fewer expectations than I did, because I have now dubbed Stephen L. Carter my new favorite author. Not my new favorite author, because, let's not get ahead of ourselves. But like in terms of like Black authors, like in terms of like finding new to me authors, this little experiment went far better than I thought it would. I don't think I've ever just like stumbled upon an author in a library, or at least I haven't stumbled upon it across an author in a library since Mary, because that's how I found Mary originally. I was just like, oh, let me read Emergency Contact because it's a romance and it's February, and quickly fell in love with Mary, her books. And so it's been a minute since I've just like stumbled across an author in a library. And this one, I at least had heard of Mary H.K. Choi. I'd seen people read her books on BookTube. But Stephen O. Carter's is like literally out of nowhere. And so for Jericho's Fall to like objectively, it's a 3 objectively, I think. I think it's tightly paced. I do think that it is stronger because it is a 10-hour audiobook. I don't really know the physical page numbers, but like I do think that it is as tight as it can be. And I think that it really does show Stephen R. Carter's restraint, given that I've seen this man write 600, 500-page books that I don't know needed to be that long, but were still entertaining. So I do think this showed like a level of restraint that I want to say I hadn't seen from him before, but it just felt new to me, given that I've read 4 other books by him. And so it was nice seeing that here. But I do still wish that like it had been something. Like I do, maybe it's because the other books we really got to see an array of settings. Even in Invisible, we get to see, Eunice Carter and her life in Atlanta. And then when she moves up to, the north in New York City, when she's going to Smith College, and like and she's going on, well, we don't see her go on vacation, but we know that she goes on vacation to the West Indies because her husband, who she gets the Carter last name from, was from Barbados. And so she goes back to Barbados to see, because now she has family there. I think she sends her son to Barbados, Stephen O. Carter's father. And so like there's a sense of like moving around. And here Rebecca is firmly in Colorado the entire book. And sure, she calls her mother, who is in Florida, but we don't see her go anywhere except to places like down the mountain and then right back up the mountain. Like he lives on the peak of the mountain or like right below the peak, and she drives into the town, and then she drives back up the peak and she drives into town. Like, I don't know. I just feel like I wanted something. But again, it's also objectively, I think, a 3-star book, and objectively a book that I think maybe it's a good place to start because it is shorter than his other ones, but like it's also the least historical fiction. This is definitely grounded in like the 2009s. A little bit. I mean, Jericho Ainsley is an old man, and Jericho Ainsley is not trying to live in 2009, and it's not a bygone era like some of his other books. Maybe The Emperor of Ocean Park is also more modern. Again, like this is for the time that the book is written in. It's not, I guess like today you could argue that the early aughts are verging into historical territory. And do I think that like every reference would be understood by somebody who is not like me, 27 years old, and lived through some of this stuff? But like I hesitate to call the early 2000s historical just yet. Give me a couple of years, 2025, we can call the early 2000s historical, but not yet. No, I just can't do it. But I do think that is all. Maybe that's another thing. I really like his stuff that is more historical or feels more historical, and things that feel a little more contemporaneous don't work as much. I'm leaning on the table. I did enjoy it. I do recommend it. I haven't read a bad book by Stephen O. Carter. Definitely won't be my last book by Stephen O. Carter, but for the purposes of this video, it was. And overall, like I said, I do think this is a success. I think that if you are in the mood for Stephen L. Carter, he has a book for you. It is a little bit alternative history in every instance that he is writing. Sometimes the alternate history doesn't really matter. Like sometimes this is like, okay, Jericho Ainsley, what is a person that's in the role, but history is progressing the same way that it would anyway. And then sometimes it's like the impeachment of Abraham Lincoln, where we're going to really do a thought experiment, where at this point in history, Abraham Lincoln is not assassinated, but other events play out, and you have to deal with the assassination not happening at this time and these other events happening instead. And in each instance that I see him doing something that is alternate, I do think he does something interesting with it, because even in back channel, I did eventually go back and read the author's note, and while there was no back channel with like a 18, 19-year-old black college student from Cornell, there was a back channel with, I think it was the same like Soviet intelligence person, but it was a man who was working at like ABC World News or whatever. And so I do think that when he took he took, this news person and made the back channel be this like 19-year-old college student, I do think that he took into consideration, okay, well, what are the implications of this? And like, how would this realistically ripple out? And I think that he does a really good job in telling his alternate history, because I do think that that's part of the fun for him, in a way that like sometimes like American Royals, like it's alternate history, but like the alternate history is not the purpose of anything, and we're not really going to examine it. It's just like things are playing out sometimes differently, sometimes not. Stephen Carter, really am happy that I found him this blackathon. Easily one of the highlights of my February reading. Consistently was giving me 3, 4, 5-star reads, and that's all I can really ask from an author. So I know that in 2023 I will go back and I will read some other books that he has, but for right now I'm going to close the door on Mr. Stephen Carter, and I'm going to Professor Carter. Let me be. There are so many professors. We got Professor Winstead, we got Professor Hazelwood, we got Professor Carter. We have a whole university running on my channel. I guess I could technically call, Brandy Sandy Professor Sandy, but we're not gonna do that. I don't think he needs the honor. But I'm gonna go. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys again soon in another video. But until then, and until next time.